to this session on Writing Centre Futures, which I'm afraid is going to be 45 minutes max because we have to go for the online one at 4. Sorry, we're a little bit delayed today. And so we're talking about the future of writing centres, international discussions and shifting local realities. I think that's important because things are changing, and how do we adapt to the writing centres to that? Kia's just asked me about differences between writing intensive courses and writing centres. I think that's also quite an interesting thing to bring up here. Very happy to have with us here Professor Laura Dison, who started the Education Writing Centre. Motlatso, hopefully might come, but isn't here yet. Marike from CLM. And Pia, actually, great. Pia also from CLM. So maybe I'll begin with Laura, and we'll just do the same sort of format. What's working, what needs work, and any further thoughts, and then we'll open up to discussion. Many thanks for joining us now.
Thanks, Pam. I'm very pleased that Mandisa's here because she's been a writing peer tutor at the Wits School of Education Writing Centre for many years. So she'll give her take on the program Wuru that I'm going to talk about today. I just want to start with those questions you asked us to prepare. And one of the things I've been thinking is, how do we know that something works? And it's not about whether someone's improved their marks in their essays, because that's often what the pressure is. I mean, we always ask to look at how students have shifted their performance, how they've done an exam, certainly for our funders. And maybe I should just start, seeing that we've been talking about funding a lot today, is that our writing centre at the Wits School of Education has never received a cent from Wits. We're grant funded. We receive funding from the Council of Education, a small amount. And that is significant in terms of some of the points that came up today around valuing of the work we do and so on, and I will come back to that a bit later. But I think that what's also interesting and not measurable is the kind of impact that the writing centres had on some of the practices we were talking about earlier. So, for example, the way, I think a big thing at the School of Education has been the way we've worked with subject specialists and lecturers in redesigning curriculum, and particularly the tutorial space, and finding space to develop reading and writing practices and critical thinking. So that's been a significant shift. I'll talk about that in a moment. My colleague Marike and I wrote a chapter recently where we looked at some of the turning points in the Wits School of Education Writing Centre. In fact, it's for a collection that's being edited by my colleague Laura Dison. There are two Lauras here today. I think that what struck us both during these years in looking at our contribution to transformative writing spaces in higher education is how resilient many of our core writing principles have been. And I'm going to talk about 4 of those today. That despite all the challenges we've had, and most recently the move to emergency online work, we note how the Writing Centre has developed and sustained the core function, I think, of supporting students' learning. I think all of us have been grappling with these unintended consequences of COVID in a range of ways, but also post-COVID, the expressed need by many people to go back to so-called normality, and that things were great before COVID. And that's something I'm also going to talk about, and I'd like to discuss with this group when we look at future possibilities and transformation. So the first thing I want to talk about is challenging deficit assumptions, because that is absolutely huge and has been at the School of Education. Rejecting the remedial approach to writing development at universities. And when we first started 10 years ago, actually it's more than 10 now, 2010, nearly 13 years ago, it was very much a kind of a model that was linked to Wits's framing of students as as at risk and in needing of support and struggling on the margins. And over the next 3 or 4 years, we created a model that was very different and developed a project called Project Wuru, which is formally embedded in a first-year course, which is compulsory. It's a theoretical course for all first-year students. And the uniqueness of this project is that it was co-designed. It was designed in collaboration with Education One lecturers and Writing Centre people. And catering for all education students. So today, a lot of the reading and writing materials are in the mainstream tutorials, the 2-hour tutorials students have every week, and have been embedded in the course. And over and above that, we have something called Wuru, Write Up, Read Up, which is additional reading and writing support for students. In the past, it was when students didn't do well in an assignment, they were told, go to Wuru. Now, people were talking earlier about put-down comments in essays. For me, a put-down comment is go to the Writing Centre. And I'm hoping that we don't see too much of that anymore. But even though Wuru is not a fixture on the program, it's a session where students work with ideas. And for me, a sign of success, and students reflect every week. Reflection and reflective practice is a fundamental part of the work of the Writing Centre. They have to write how they've engaged with the sessions. And when they write that, they feel they were heard. They feel that their ideas mattered. They felt that they shifted conceptually, that they had an opportunity to free write their ideas, that they listened to their colleagues, they got feedback in their groups. For me, that's success. It's not about the marks. And that's been a very important shift in the way that we work. And maybe at this point, if I could ask Mandy or maybe Washango to comment on this shift away from those deficit assumptions, moving towards deepening conceptual understandings through reading and writing activities, writing as thinking. Someone spoke about the energy. Before I talk about some of the other principles, I don't know, Mandy, if you want to comment at this point.
So I've been a peer tutor at the Writing Centre since 2019. And luckily, by the time I joined the Writing Centre had already moved away from that deficit model or approach. And what I'm finding is that the Writing Centre has gained almost a positive connotation or positive energies towards them. It's no longer seen as a place that you go to when you are suffering or when Wits is dealing with you, but it's really about students who are trying to find themselves as writers. And what we do through our Write Up, Read Up programs is that we sort of help students understand the demands of academic writing. We're not saying that no one knows how to write, but we're just saying that the level or the standard at which you're expected to write at Wits is completely different from how you would write at high school, no matter how good your high school was. So we're just there to help you understand things like plagiarism, referencing, the importance of reading, the importance of writing, and also helping students find ways to be able to voice themselves, because sometimes, especially in education, students are able to reluctant to say what they think because they're not confident in their thinking. Or someone spoke earlier about, okay, but where do you stand in this argument? Finding themselves in an argument and being able to substantiate that, that's quite a lot of work. So we try to do that, obviously not in one session, but through a series of sessions. And oftentimes we meet up as peer tutors with Laura and everyone at the Writing Centre, and we come up with a plan to say, okay, maybe just because we are still at the beginning of the year, let's focus on free writing. Let's get students to take out whatever is in their head, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, and help them to think about it. And then from then on, we move to the more challenging things like topic analysis for specific questions. And then once you've analyzed the topic, how do you structure an argument and things like that. So I think because of that and the fact that we encourage everyone to come, obviously with the help of lecturers also do say that, you know, if you need like to feel a little bit easier about this topic after an exam briefing or an assignment briefing, feel free to go to the Writing Centre. We've had more students come in, and what I think for me as a positive sign is that when they come in, they feel sad and they're heavy and they're anxious, but when they come out, there's like, okay, there's lights, there's direction, there's hope, I can do this. So that's basically what we try to do.
And I think that Mandy alluded to the training program. We have a fairly rigorous training program on a Saturday morning as well. And here's where the writing program on main campus played a fundamental role in helping us develop a dialogical approach to working with students, to moving away. I mean, I must say it's interesting. I've worked closely over the years with Jean Moore, who runs the Writing Centre at the School of Law, and we often have this discussion and debate whether it's an advantage or not having education students who peer tutors. I think the issue is the training and how the tutors work with students. That it's not about transmitting concepts. It's about getting students to clarify their understanding of a whole range of concepts. In some cases, it's very helpful that the peer tutors understand Vygotskian concepts and can see where things are going awry. But it's more about it's clarifying understanding, using writing and reading engagement. And reading, we haven't got time to talk about it too much today, but that's something we focus quite heavily on. And working with the text in that formal theoretical course, which are often very, very challenging and difficult. We spoke about learning the new discourse. So I think that the issue of listening, interpersonal competencies and pedagogical strategies for working with students has been absolutely key, and the kinds of questions we ask students. Mandy spoke a little bit about the Wednesday lunch meetings and the notion of reflective practice, something that doesn't come automatically, that students and peer tutors have learned over the years in their process of exchanging ideas, sharing strategies, creative strategies to deal with demands placed on students. I don't want to talk about it now, but there's been some interesting conflicts between the way that we interpret topics and the way that topics are often mediated to students in the course. And that's been very productive, I think, because we sometimes brought lecturers in to clarify their thinking. And for them, it's also been an opportunity to reflect on the way they've developed their rubrics and made their assessment criteria explicit or not. So that's been very, very interesting. That's why I'm so interested in whether the work we do has actually influenced assessment practices, the way we design tasks, which are often quite opaque, critically discuss X without much unpacking or scaffolding. So just the last thing I'd like to talk about is a big emphasis for us is working with assessment criteria, rubrics, and with feedback in different ways. And as education students work within a paradigm of assessment for learning, that assessment is part of the teaching and learning process, that it's not something that happens at the end where they're measured. And so it's been a very useful opportunity to really put those ideas into practice and work with feedback in a different way, to understand the role of feedback and how productive it can be. But also I think where we're very behind, and in I think South African universities and maybe globally, is the way that students engage with feedback and how that is formalized within the curriculum. I mean, I know, for example, that in many of the universities in Hong Kong, students would never hand in an assignment without writing a paragraph beforehand saying what they would like feedback on. And it's you know, this is the problem, is that it's become a kind of top-down, unidirectional process, and we're not encouraging students to engage with the feedback enough. And then just a little word on COVID is that part of that resilience I was talking about earlier is what we've reflected on at the Writing Centre, is this huge loss of human action. But a key lesson learned was that writing pedagogies that are traditionally used in individual and group spaces could be utilised in appropriate ways online. And we tried a whole lot of different strategies for working with students online, asynchronously and synchronously, also guided by the writing program, which brought out a very good set of guidelines at the beginning of COVID. And trying to maintain the dialogic approach was very important. And work on, I mean, I've got a lot to say, that's why I made notes about feedback, comments, and how difficult those are, those quick solutions to feedback online, that you kind of just draw on comments that have already been developed. I think that's very, very problematic. And it sort of moves away from that dialogic process, but that's something we can talk about. And then just finally, what I'm going to end with is the collaboration with disciplinary experts. I think that's one of the most significant things that's happened at the Writing Centre, is trying to make visible the implicit ways of reading and writing in the discipline, as we discussed earlier. What does it mean to think? What is the nature of learning and of thinking in education sociology or in maths education, and how that affects and influences the way that students engage in the writing process. And just, you asked me to say, to also think about what doesn't work. And what I would like to say is that I do think that a lot of our public discourse belittles, divides and blames. There's a bit of a blame game that goes on. Student deficit, staff deficit, we hear it all the time. And in as much as we've tried to move away towards a more inclusive environment, having these very, very large classes at undergraduate levels. I mean, last year we had over 900 first-year students. It's just simply not conducive for the kinds of dialogic, interactive, and developmental work we want to do with students. And as I said earlier, we're relying on external funding. So I do think we need to overhaul some of the transition systems and find ways of doing that, and to raise critical questions, and that's part of our own reflective practice. In conversation with students, how do we institutionalize partnerships with students where they know that their voices, thoughts and ideas matter without fear of judgment? The sorts of things that are happening in the Writing Centre outside as well. So I think that our challenge is to engage in ongoing processes of self-reflection. I liked what someone said earlier today, that it's not about a self-indulgent self-reflection, but it's narrating our experiences of working in the centre, which enables us to interrogate our assumptions and to really think critically about what we're doing. We are participating in more public arenas where we can voice these views, but we need to do so more and more increasingly. Thanks very much. I think I've said too much. It's too much to say.
Sure. No, thanks for that, Laura. I'm just going to piggyback on you for a lot of the stuff that you've said. So, first, if Pam doesn't mind, I'm first going to put on my science hat, since it isn't too far removed from me at the moment, and then I'll put on my CLM hat. So, in science, it was an interesting thing. So Science's centre, and I'm just going to call it loosely a centre, because it was never envisioned as a writing centre. It was a student success centre. And within that, there were various, or still is, various sources. So they have a wellness facilitator, they have advisors and writing people and LMS people. So It's like almost a mini little teaching and learning unit. And so what the first obstacle of that centre is that there isn't financial resources for more of X. There couldn't be 2 wellness facilitators, there couldn't be 4 advisors, there couldn't be 2 writing people. So the bulk of what was done had to be done by one person. So you had to find innovative ways of connection, and that's why I think I'm just piggybacking off Laura there, but about what is good principles within this resource-constrained environment that we live in, was that collaboration became a very important and strong aspect of the success of what works. So it was having strong collaborations with the Writing Intensive program. Luckily, when I started at Wits, the Writing Intensive program was also starting, and it was very easy to piggyback on there, because there was no way to get writing consultants within the science space. But through training the writing fellows and supporting the writing fellows, we could help get to the students as mini consultants. So that was very important. So that type of collaboration was very important to make that space a success. But it was also very important to collaborate with staff and students. So 2 of the courses, so we created short courses as well within the science space, because we felt that that was the easiest way to reach, again, a larger group of students with the minimal human resources that we had. So those courses came into being because students asked for it. And in science, there's a very strong Science Student Council. So at faculty level and at school level, the councils are actually very, very strong, and they ask for help, which is fantastic. So that was another great way of collaboration. So the first year I was at Wits in 2018, we did lunchtime workshops that the council asked for to support students in writing. And the turnout on that was actually quite good. And based on that, we then developed a free short course we called the Foundations of Scientific Thinking and Writing. And that we pitched specifically at honours level, but other postgrads could also do the course. And we had to fight a little bit with Wits, as we always do, to ensure that the course, we can offer it for free. Because it's an official course, it went through ACDC, whatever, I always get the names or the acronym wrong way around. So they get an official certificate from Wits. And because it's an official certificate, they have to pay X amount of money for it. And so we fought very hard to ensure that those courses are free. And what was really nice about that, because we also pitched that at the Writing Fellows, come do the Scientific Thinking and Writing course. Because, and that course is not for you, or it's not to make you a better writing fellow, although it did make them better writing fellows. It was a course that was about, we're going to talk very openly about your own writing, about writing an honours report and an honours research proposal. As Sandile mentioned earlier today, he said, well, we don't do a lot of writing in science, and then at honours level they pitch up and they have to be able to write. So that was one way that we tried to address that issue, but also through that course, and it was quite a reflective course, very open, very discussion-based, etc. It wasn't actually teaching, it was facilitation. The students became more aware of their own writing, and through becoming more aware of their own writing, they could engage with the students that they were working with in a much closer and way. So that was something that we thought worked very well in science. And then also in science, we did do this, we as a royal we, because it was just me, we also did consultations, but more specifically with postgraduate students. And there what was lovely was that we worked so much with the lecturers that and supervisors, that they recommended students come to the writing centre or to the student centre for consultations. But it was never a deficit thing, because it was positioned, everybody can learn to write better or to position themselves better or to deepen their thinking through writing. So a lot of that, and what I absolutely loved about those sessions was that it was a completely flat hierarchy, because the supervisor made a recommendation. Please go to the student centre, go chat with somebody about writing. The student would come, and I would tell them, I know a little bit about writing, but I'm not an expert. You know a little bit about science, and you feel you're also not an expert. And what really happened was they taught me quite a lot of interesting things about their disciplines, and I helped them, I hope, to communicate it in a better way. And that really helped also deepen that contextual understanding. And I think that's what the writing fellows also do, of course, in their courses. I didn't want to interrupt Sandile earlier when he talked about the Turnitin scores being lower, and maybe the students don't cheat that much anymore. But I actually think it has to do, and I'm not basing this on any evidence, of course, but what I think it is actually about is that the students had an opportunity to think with someone, to deepen their thinking. And through deepening the thinking, the words become your own, and therefore your Turnitin score is lower. And I think that's a very valuable thing. So then I'm going to jump into the CLM space, and I'm going to ask Pia to, of course, just also add on. So the CLM space is also, again, resource constrained. I think that's the problem. What doesn't work for most of us is that we would love to do more, and we know that there's so much more that we can do, but based on what we have available, it is difficult. So within the CLM space, also not technically a writing centre, but a postgraduate writing unit. What we really love, or what I really love about that space, is that the positioning was really not just about getting students to write better. It's never been a deficit. It's been a place for community. And that was built through 3-day retreats, like and also the event we had this morning with our postgrads in the Rembrandt Gallery, to just engage with them and also connect them with each other. It is so powerful to see how the students who are from different schools within the faculty talk to each other about, oh, this is what you're doing with your methodology. Have you thought about it like this? Have you thought about engaging your reader like this? Or have you thought about this and that? And that is a valuable thing, and that's what I think works very well in the spaces that we are in, is that we do create space for students to connect with each other, especially in spaces like the postgraduate space, where it is quite an isolating and lonely journey most of the time, where that space can be held for students, and where they can build themselves in that space with each other. Yeah. So Pia, is there anything you would like to add to that?
I think you've covered it very, very well. But perhaps also to say that rather than a writing centre where perhaps students might just come in for a once-off, meeting at the point of crisis, but then never come back and, be in such a panic that it's not necessarily as much of a learning opportunity as it could be. We happen to be around when students want to have conversations about writing. And we see the same students from proposal stage all the way through, because once people find the community, then they turn to whoever is there. So it tends to be more of an incremental learning that we can be involved with. And in that way, we hope the people who work with us become better writers.
Yeah. Pam, if I could just ask with Shango, if you can, to talk about our postgrad support, because I think similarly it's a kind of organic community that's developed because of the leadership of Washango.
Well, I must say that, I mean, we've been trying to do something in the postgraduate space, but we find, I guess, it will take a while to reach the point where hopefully we could be like the undergraduate write-up, read-up, the woo space, because especially from the honors level, we find that the need for, even like Marike was saying, is that the need for support to the students is so high, especially for what I've noticed is the part of, for the, what's it called, the honors. So what has happened in the past, we've just been called for one afternoon to give, there's a theory course, and there's one after, a 2-hour for the whole year. And so what we were trying to do this year was to have a series of workshops. And we came up with a number of, a bit of pushback, but we're hoping in the second semester we'll probably make better inroads, because what initially had happened was that the course used to have an academic skills component, like what you were mentioning, but then it was scrapped because students were not paying, and then they couldn't fund it, and it was scrapped. And now when we were marking for the exams, the lecturers were saying, this is just, it can't continue like this. So hopefully, I mean, that the level of engagement with text, the level of writing is really not at the postgraduate level. So hopefully we'll make better inroads in that for the coming semester, because the need has been seen. It is great. Then for further the master's level, we are usually called in to do workshops. And one lecturer has called us in 2 consecutive years just to do one workshop, which is 2 hours. And one of his students said that, oh, I've just realized all I've been handing in was free writing. So this student had when they were given an assignment, he would just write and send it in, and had no clue that he needed to have it set up in, and this is at the master's level. And then almost every quarter there is what we call the research weekend. So it's where the masters by dissertation and PhD candidates and students come and present their work. So what has happened in the past, it's 3 years, at each of those, it's a quarterly, like the quarterly conferences, that the Writing Centre has a 1-hour slot. And we do different things during that 1-hour slot where all students attend. The one challenge is converting, like what you were saying, converting that, and even what Laura was saying, converting the concept of deficit, that you're coming to the Writing Centre because you have a problem, or that it's something that we are engaging with continuously. But the students, many of them are actually working, so for them to engage, so one of the things we've encouraged is that we can have online consultation. So slowly, we're hoping that will begin to have traction. But that I guess it's like Guru and the undergrad, it's a work in progress, and slowly I believe we'll make better inroads where people don't come to us just because the lecturer said, your writing is poor, go to the Writing Centre. That was what was always happening, but that they'll just want to come and engage.
We've got 350 students in Wuru, which is half the class, which is great.
And to imagine when Wuru started, it really started as deficit. It was in 2013, where we were told, Writing Centre, do something with these students, they're just about to be excluded. And this was in September, and we meant to do magic. So we got some workshops done, and then after that, slowly now we almost had to force students to come. Now we are oversubscribed. I mean, students come and they automatically want to be into Wuru. So I'm sure with the postgraduate, eventually we'll get there, where people just generally just come because they want to engage with their writing.
So we don't have the Law Writing Centre here, but I'll just quickly do the Wits Writing Centre. And I will get some in the brochure. If you haven't got a brochure yet, please come and get a brochure. It's beautifully done, thank you. So the Writing Centre, way back in 1996, began against the deficit model, and also with the sense of the power of bright students working together. And I think those are the things that do work at the Wits Writing Centre, the sense of creating networks and confidence. And it's people, it's getting back to face and having that energy, and also the sense of role development, because now with the connection to the writing program, as Laura Jo was saying, people are working in these different roles of consultant, of writing fellow in different disciplines, of senior writing fellows. And we've always pushed this idea of taking initiatives. So having an idea, taking initiative, and then making it practical, as with Chango, and we can also claim Chango as one of our citizen scholars, this ideal of pushing students to think of an idea, think of a really good project, and then doing it. And that 50% of actually doing it is huge and important and very impressive. In Chango's case, and as in our earlier session with Nelly and Lorata, who have also been citizen scholars. Other things that are working, I think, connected to this sense of networking, and I was listening to Marike's, I think when we can work together, we're stronger, even the sense of resource restriction, creating a culture of writing where things feed on one another, where ideas are grown. So Fuad and Laurie Jo and the various writing groups where writing fellows, postgraduates are working with each other in a peer space and developing different ideas. And I wasn't in yours, but I could hear in Fuad's that those students are doing remarkable things and becoming sort of almost new movements of researchers in publishing. We've had the Developing Writers Programme, which is similar to what both of you have mentioned, of a supervisor coming in with a student, with a consultant, and then signing up for a series of 12 or 10 sessions, and then having a final meeting with the supervisor. That's another way of connecting the work. The Writing Library, I think, is another thing that's important, that we have this Writing Library in the Writing Centre. Because I want my idea of the Writing Centre, Kia was asking me the difference between the Writing Centre and the Writing Programme. The Writing Programme is the mainstream teaching. The Writing Centre, and I think this is responding to UNESCO's idea of the future of education, I want to conceive it as a resource. So that students come, they've got the Writing Library, the Black Praxis people use a seminar room, people come in and use it as a poetry space. So this idea of a resource for writers, I think that's something that could go on into the future. And connecting to the community, we don't do that often enough. These Mamelodi people yesterday were fascinating. And if they can be connected to those visual artists, we have really interesting discussions about how to document heritage. Tomorrow, we've got TTP starting, so I think that's well, Chango, you're on tomorrow. So also having these other projects that make writing much broader than getting a mark, make writing about action and community work, having a symbiotic relationship with the writing program, which now we might try to make learning paths. So my latest metaphor for Lauren's book is the idea of the forest. If we can create a forest that doesn't have a centre but has ways in which we are sharing principles and growing, I think that's the way to go. What needs development is our online methods on our Wazi site. Ways forward, perhaps more team building because we've been away for so long. Civic engagement projects, we've got an awful lot of people who are very interested in civic engagement projects. I know the university doesn't fund them, but I think that's a lovely way forward for writing centres. You have 10 minutes left. I don't know which question people would like to take up forward.
For 1 year now, I'm a writing fellow at Olson with the IWT and at Bard College.
Which means, it stands Institute for Writing and Thinking, IWT.
Institute for Writing and Thinking. And actually they were funded, established by Peter Elbow and others, so they have been working since the 80s. So what we are actually discussing, there's a lot around student-centered learning, experiential learning, and it's really great to see across faculties how actually it's realized. And then as a lecturer myself, so when I teach art history, then I have a student who is basically in a writing intensive course with anthropology and in art history. I realize they write much better. So this is one indicator, I think, where we can see that writing intensive courses really have an impact. And now my question, because I'm kind of, although I've been writing consultant since 2009, I don't know about the internal structures of how do curricular decisions, how do actually these kinds of informations, how are they disseminated among faculties? Like anthropology has a very active writing intensive. At the School of Arts, I think it's more parochial. Each department runs its own. And obviously people don't want to get something, put on top of them. But I'm just asking in terms of how can the writing centers create a form of traction, of sharing knowledges, and also making it available across departments, because for me it really shows when you have undergrad, and it's really for me about undergrad students, because I don't want to be in honors sitting and reading thesis you don't want to read. That's always what I tell my students, don't write what makes me sad. So, and in a way, like, so how is it actually like these kind of forums? And I know I've seen all of you on different, during COVID, there were these kind of webinars and these kind of talks. How are these kind of brought forward in terms of these kind of different? I just got now a message from Prof Bradbury that there's the postgraduate review of extracurricular teaching, and so like it seems there are efforts done here and there, and I'm just curious to hear how is this going to, how can that lead to a more conducive dialogue of sharing experiences?
Well, at the School of Education, I think it happens at a number of levels, just through informal networks, and so with ed studies, establishing relationships with some of the lecturers, really through corridor chats and staff room chats and talking about some of the issues, and that's really how the whole thing started, in trying to formalize this project. But I think one of the things we've done, Disa and Washango can help as well, but we try and use every opportunity. So during the centenary last year, we gave a talk to the School of Education reflecting on, it was an incredibly powerful panel of writing consultants, some of whom have done incredibly well or doing interesting things about their own writing, their own development, and all of about 10 lecturers arrived at the presentation. So this is a perennial issue. The one very productive thing that happened some years ago was Prof Shalem, Yael Shalem, who's very, very interested in assessment. She, as a result of some of the feedback we were getting from the Writing Centre, that lecturers were getting about issues to do with application of theory, where lecturers often think that if you get students to apply theory, then that's going to make it much easier for them. But her view was that they don't have enough content knowledge to apply the theory. And so we had a whole lot of discussion around the nature of the tasks that we set for first and second year students. So we actually, as a result of that, she set up a research project where we sat in the staff lounge. We've got about 200 staff members, and we were analysing our tasks. And a whole lot of papers were published as a result of that, where we developed a kind of assessment tool to see how we could analyse our tasks critically. And we realised that we were really off track in the way that we were designing assessment, criteria and so on, and that was very productive. But that came to a halt at some point. So, there's another disruption. So how do we sustain those good practices? And we staff are also having important teaching and learning conversations. And then when you've got issues like payment issues and structural problems, systemic problems, it doesn't help the situation. But I think that a lot of it is our own agency, but systemically I think that we've got a long way to go to hold these conversations.
Yeah, I think the writing board of the faculties is one setup that people can have representation on and bring these issues on.
The writing board.
Writing board of the faculties. but maybe we also can use the online space. And I was thinking that would be a useful thing, to have a space where there are, maybe we could get together and agree on some principles of how we understand writing, and then there are links to the various places. Because maybe we can make a virtual spiders centre.
Yeah.
Sorry, my
I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And
I think it's worth doing those assumptions, writing down the assumptions we have about writing and teaching, the ones that we share.
It's going to be starting in about
Sorry.
5
No.
minutes.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So I'm sorry, the next session has to start at 4. But all right, so we have a sort of agreement of action there.
Yeah. I just want to quickly add to
Yes.
that in a minute. So this is also, Laura, I don't want to put you on the spot, but so Laura used to run the Writing Centre at the University of the Free State, and I think very well. And a trick that I learned from her that was fantastic, also collaboration between lecturers and so forth, but also getting to students, is how Laura did online workshops that she built into Blackboard, which is the UFS's LMS. So I think those types of things can also, in that spider web that you're talking about, that online space, can be quite useful. And like I said, I don't want to put you on the spot, Laura, but...
That's great.
No, that Prof Nichols has spoken about how the center was started. I'm reminded of the reading that we had 20 years ago. I think it was located in the engineering department. So,
yes.
Was it incidental or was it by design? Was the idea already there that it should be interdisciplinary? Because
The idea was it began as interdisciplinary, and it also began linking with writers because it was about identity, so it was not coincidental. Because we have this picture on our walls. We've just met again for the first time in 25 years or something.
Yes, because I thought it was a question of not having accommodation in the literature department.
Well, was that was at Wits Plus. We moved around a lot before we were formalised.
Okay.
Yes.
So just to, I'm not taking up Laura's space, but it's just that one of the things that I've seen at our school is that how Prof Dison is called, anytime there's something, they always have a slot for writing centre. And often I don't think that they're really thinking, but it's almost like I don't know, sometimes I feel it's just, almost like a political move, but the difference with that is that even though they're doing it as, oh yes, we have a writing, put it in the program, it does make a difference that we are out there, that the writing centre is seen out there. Yeah, it's visible, but like how to get the lecturers to see us as not just an add-on.
And also not to see the sites that we've developed with lots of amazing materials as another go to the site. You know.
Pam is going to be with you guys in 3 minutes.
I think we have to close the session. You're welcome to continue it at the Writing Centre. There will be some supper at 5, and then we have a book launch
It's very good to meet you too.
5:30.